quick revision of verse 3, we stated that Arjun has, owing to his consistent self-reflection, he sees the limitations of living, and not just in one area or the other, but he sees in overall the limitations of life, of good wealth and fame and skills and all of those, and age and so on. So by this recognition, he naturally would go out and reach out for the solution. He found Krishna and he approached him with humility, and he said that I still feel a void and I need you to help me out, because the void has no bottom. That's what a void means. So again, if your void is at 25, it's a bottomless pit. If the void is at 30, it's still a bottomless pit. If the void is at 50, it's still a bottomless pit. If the void is at 80, it is still a bottomless pit. So a void is always a void, which means that the one who recognizes this void at 25 or 20 is in the same position as the one who recognizes the void at 80, because a void is a void. And so the solution, thus, to fill that void, to recognize there is no void in the first place, is always going to be the same. And so then the next verse, in 4, Arjun found a contradiction in Krishna's words in verse 1 and 2. And he says that, quote, I gave this knowledge to Vivasvan. Then Arjun said, Vivasvan lived before you, so how is it possible? And so this shows us two things: that first of all, a discerning student will pose a question. They will not silently keep it within, because it's going to bother you. And if your question is unanswered, then you're not able to focus on anything else that comes afterwards. So Arjun wants his question solved as soon as possible. And it also shows that Krishna says that I'm not speaking as Mr. Krishna with the yellow cloth and the flute and the one that's holding the reins. But when I say I have taught this to Vivasvan and all of the prior rishis, it means that I was speaking as the all knowledge, all power aspect, which was coming through people's discernment, considering they did have a clean environment, a place that's relaxed, and they're able to think. So Krishna was then reassuring Arjuna in this way. And then in verse 5, he was then describing the difference between Ishvara, Avatar, and Jiva. So this was his introductory verse in verse 5. And he says that the difference is that the Jiva firstly takes self as one of the many. And so anyone that you meet in your life, including us when we were born, maybe until very recently, you looked at yourself as one of the many, and thereby you saw that I have to make it in this world. I have to be someone. I have to make the best of what I've got, because I am an individual and I have to now appease this individual. So naturally, by doing so, what then will you do? You will go into the world and make deals, negotiate, talk with people, incur consequences, because just by acting alone, we do put causes into the universe. And those causes, by definition, by the law of cause and effect, have to go back to the original doer. That's just how the law is. And so those causes, because you don't live long enough as a body-mind complex, those causes get parked inside a very special place. Not that it is a place, but we just give a figurative term called Sanchita Karma. And Sanchita Karma, we call it your bank account. So think of it as you have a bank account and I have a bank account. And inside that bank account, normally, like, we have money. And suppose it's clean money. You made that money in a good, in an honest fashion. So now when you withdraw from the ATM, what comes out? Clean, honest money. And what can you afford with clean, honest money? Clean, honest people, clean, honest experiences. right? Now, unfortunately, none of us have a clean, honest, 100% bank account when it comes to Sanchita Karma. We have a currency called black money and clean money, papam and punyam. So now when you go to the ATM and you withdraw your currency by which you can afford experiences in this world, what kind of money will come out? A mixture of papam and punyam. So therefore, when we pay with papam and punyam, we sometimes get things that are painful, and sometimes they are very welcoming, and you feel like you're very lucky. And so this is Sanchita Karma. And so everyone like this can only withdraw black money and clean money. And this is what gives every individual their fair share of suffering and their fair share of enjoyments. There's not one individual that is all clean and always gets lucky. And if you do see this, I will be very skeptical, because it's very easy to put a face nowadays, especially on Twitter and Instagram, and oh, ha, 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 oh, I'm happy. But if you look behind the scenes, if a person is honest, and that of itself speaks a lot about the person, to be honest, then they will gladly admit that, no, my life is not all rainbows and sunshine. It is, it comes with series of pains and aches, but also there's good things and there's good friends. So this is the truth of everyone. And so through this, then Krishna continues, he says, so unlike a jiva who is thus born with black and clean money, punya and papam, because of their unseen consequences that were parked in their sanchita karma, that were waiting to fructify in one more life, Avatara, on the other hand, doesn't have sanchita karma, so they are not born with a series of unseen consequences that have to be worked out. So they do not have sanchita karma, and they are not born from ignorance. So that brings us to the other topic, why a jiva is born. The jiva is born for two reasons. One, sanchita karma, like I explained, and two, because of ignorance, that I am as good as this receiver of these results and the doer of the results. So this means that if you look at yourself as one of the many, then you are as good as one of the many, even though you are the whole. But as long as my ignorance doesn't allow me to recognize that directly, then whatever happens to the individual is happening as though happening to me, Brahman. So like this, jiva comes because of two reasons, sanchita karma and avidya, whereas avatara does not come because of sanchita karma and avidya, but comes for a purpose. And that purpose we shall see in the following verses. What is an avatara? And Krishna will say it comes, he or she comes by wielding his power called Maya or Prakriti. Let's see what this is. Verse 6. Ajopi sannavyayatma bhutanam ishwaropi san prakritim swam adhishtaya sambhavam yatma mayaya.
Even though being one who is unborn, one whose knowledge does not wane, and also being the Lord of all living beings, still wielding my own Prakriti, I, as though, came into being by my own creative power.
So I want us to look at a few keywords here. Number one is unborn. Two is knowledge does not wane. Next is wielding my own Prakriti, same as Maya. And lastly, I, as though, come into being. So not actually come into being, but as though come into being. So let's analyze this verse. So I'm going to start with being unborn, whose knowledge does not wane. I am the Lord of all beings. Okay. So what we're speaking of here is Ishvara. So Ishvara is unborn. Now Ishvara, so we said that the final reality is consciousness. We said that consciousness enjoys a power to manifest a universe. This power, according to the verse, is Prakriti or Maya. Now, when we talk about Ishvara, so what Ishvara is when consciousness is wielding, as though wielding his power of Maya. So you could say Ishvara equals consciousness plus Prakriti. So consciousness with the activated power of Maya, then the whole reality we call Ishvara. Chit plus Prakriti equals Ishvara. So now can you say that Ishvara is Ishvara like a third thing here? Is that what we're saying? No. So let me explain this in an analogy. So suppose that right now you are a being. You're the whole being. And you're a conscious being in this moment. And in you, there is a power to manifest a dream tonight. Is that dream activated right now? Is that dream active in this moment? No. Does that mean you don't have the power because the dream is not active? No. So though the dream is not active, the world of complex laws and time and space and fights and hugs and so on, though it's not active in this moment, it doesn't mean that that the power is absent in you. It is in you right now, the conscious being. It's just that this power is dormant. It's in potential. So therefore, when we say dormant power, this Maya refers to, or Prakriti refers to that dormant power. So now when the circumstances are just right, then tonight what happens? That power manifests the world. That power, we can call that power Prakriti or Maya, it manifests. And what does it do as though to you, the one from whom that power came? It turns you into two things, subject and object. So on one hand, there's an observer of this magnificent, colorful world. We call that the subject. And on the other hand, the subject is, right, looking or hearing or interfacing with objects. So both the subject and the object, they're both a manifestation of this Prakriti. And this Prakriti is a power that is being activated from this one being. So now, when the subject inside the dream asks, who created this world? Who's the creator of this world? Then we say the creator is Ishvara. Okay? So now, what do you mean when you say creator is Ishvara? Why didn't you say consciousness? Well, because consciousness requires a power to create the world. We said that for the world to be created, you need two components. You need consciousness and you need the power in consciousness to be activated. So now when you say who created this world, when you ask that and you say Ishvara, what you really mean is what created this world is Maya by the help of consciousness. Now, is Maya any different from consciousness? Are they two different things? No, because right now, if you go back to the simple example, right now, there is a potential in you to manifest a dream. Is that power different from you right now? From you, the conscious being? No. Can you be without that power? Of course you can. You are without that power right now. That power is, there's nothing to say about that power because that power is not active. So you do not depend on the power, but the power depends upon you. Because when the power resolves, you still exist. You're still a conscious being. When the power is activated and it's manifesting the world, do you cease to be a conscious being? No, you remain a conscious being while the power is resolved. And when the power is projecting a world of subjects and objects, you still continue to be exactly the same being as before. But from the standpoint of the dream, you look at yourself as what? A conscious one subject of the many. But in actuality, who are you? You are the consciousness that is pervading every subject. So suppose right now there's in the dream subject called Lorena, Jaimini, Carol, Greg, okay? And all of these subjects, and Andre, and all of these subjects are pervaded by this conscious being. And how is this conscious being known to Jaimini, Carol, Greg, Lorena, and Andre right now? How is it known directly? As I am, as an awareful, conscious being, which is why no one here can say that you're not conscious, because you are pervaded by this one conscious reality, one existent conscious reality. And that is known to you right now, in this moment, while there's a subject appearing called Jaimini, Lorena, Rani, etc., right now as a self-evidencing I. Nobody needs to evidence that you exist. You simply exist. And not only do you exist, but you also know that you are aware while you exist. Now, that existence awareness refers to the final reality, the one being which is from its power manifesting a person called Jaimini or Lorena or Asha or Greg. So when Jaimini gets built by this power because of her past causes, as we just said, because of her Sanchita karma, what happens? Then Jaimini opens her eyes, Lorena, Asha opens their eyes and goes, ah, look, I am as good as this one subject amongst many others. And therefore, what do I need to now do? I, as a subject, have to go out into the world and I have to accomplish things, have to do things. And so every time you do, you reinforce what? That you are one of the many. But in actuality, there's just one consciousness, one reality. From itself arises this power called Prakriti or Maya. You have to give it some name. It doesn't matter what name it is. Arises this power, and this power, to understand it better, can do two things. Avarana Shakti. So this one power can be understood as further as two powers to help you understand it better. And Vikshepa Shakti. So Vikshepa Shakti is the projecting power. We'll just say projecting. So just like when you're able to, or your mind's able to create this wonderful world of sensational colors and so on, it's able to project it. Do you tell your mind, suppose mind is that power, do you tell your mind, hey, mind, tonight I want you to project a mountain, project a family, a hammock, a sunshine, no rain, perfect weather? Please do that right now, mind. Do you do that? No. In fact, you can't, because you can't, as a conscious being, you can't even communicate with the mind. There are two different orders of reality. Your mind does it anyway. All you just stand as a witness, a conscious, existent being. And in you, this power arising, projecting the universe, it doesn't care about you because it has no influence on you. It has no, you can't even say stop because there are two different orders of reality. On one hand, the power is full of attributes, but you as a conscious being, you have no means to say stop projecting. It just projects it anyway. And whatever it projects, because there are two different orders of reality, one is a power of attributes, and you are the attributeless awareness. There's no way that an attribute can ever pass on to the conscious being. So therefore, all you, as far as doing is concerned, is you just stand as you are, as a illumining principle of consciousness, the light in whose presence, when this power, Vikshepa Shakti, projects, then in your presence, all of these projected things become known to whom? To the one being. But because this Vikshepa Shakti manifests so many different beings. Now, if I ask the same question again, to whom does this one, do these projected things become known? You say, to me. And then Jaime says, to me. And then Carol says, to me. So in other words, because there's one consciousness illumining the mind of all characters, every character, every mind becomes a knower. But that knowership is borrowed from the only knower there is, the only conscious knower there is, which is Brahman. Now, Vikshepa Shakti is power 1, and power 2 is Avarana Shakti, veiling. So why is it that when you're born, you do not know how to walk? Isn't it unfair? You used to spend like 1 year of your life just learning the silliest things, how to eat properly and walk. And then you learn a language, and then you realize, oh, it's just one language of 200 plus languages or more. So you're veiled in every possible manner. You're veiled from talking, you're veiled from mathematics, you're veiled from eating properly, you're veiled from walking, you're veiled from communicating, you're veiled from so many things, and that manifests as I don't know. So veiling power manifests directly as I don't know. And how does Vikshepa Shakti manifest? As I am this much. This much refers to one body mind. So that's the universal experience. You get born, I am this much, thanks to Avarana Shakti, thanks to Vikshepa Shakti, projecting. And in that I know I am this much, I also know a little bit. And that I know a little bit or I don't know is Avarana Shakti. Okay. Now, this Avarana Shakti, you might say now, well, if this veiling power is a power of Prakriti, which we explained above, does that then make Avarana, does that then make Maya ignorant? Because it surely makes a jiva ignorant. It makes a human being ignorant of how to walk, of basics like talking, let alone their nature. So it hides your nature, it hides and so many other things. Does that now mean that Maya is ignorant?
Maya, you could also say, is some kind of a veil, which is not giving us that visibility of the true self.
Avaran Shakti is Agyan.
For whom is it ajnana? For whom is it ignorance?
Jeev. For Jeev, it is ignorance.
Only for a jiva. So Avarana Shakti, the veiling power, when it manifests a world of diversity, what does it have to do? How do you create a world of diversity? You have to hide things, don't you? So if I want to hide, for example, if I want to manifest a tiger, right? I have to hide traits like a wing. I can't give a tiger wings, right? So I have to take away the wings from the tiger to make the tiger a tiger. And when I make a duck or a chicken, I can't make the duck or a chicken spin web. So I have to hide or take away the ability to spin the web from the duck or chicken in order to create a duck or a chicken. So to create differences in this universe, to create red and blue, you have to hide blueness from red for red to be red, and you have to hide red from blue for blue to be blue. Okay, so the hiding Avarana Shakti serves as a way to create diversity. But when that hiding is operating through a human being, a jiva, what does that do for us? At the level of the jiva, what is hidden from you? So many things. How to walk, how to talk, and your own nature of who you are. Now, going back to the word Gautam's word, anadi. So we said that chit is the existence. Can you say that existence started? No, started from what? From another existence? Well, in that case, there's no two existences. There's only one existence. So this chit, this Brahman, there is no start to it. It always is, it always will be. There is no beginning or an end. Now, we also said that chit has a power called Prakriti. So if Chit is beginningless, then what is also beginningless? Prakriti is also beginningless. And what is Prakriti always doing? Projecting. What is always being projected by Prakriti, which is beginningless? A jiva, you and I. So if Chit is beginningless, Prakriti is beginningless, projecting power is beginningless, Avarana, which always hides information from the jiva, is beginningless. Then what else is beginningless? Jiva, the manifestation of the human being. That means you and I, having this body now, talking to each other, since how long have we been here? Since Anadi. There's no beginning. It's just been an ongoing process based on your Sanchita karma. You've always been getting, according to the Vedic model, a new body and a certain mind with certain dispositions that are keeping with the kind of Sanchita karma or the kind of actions or the quality of actions that you've done in the past. And so you say to yourself, why do I have a female body? Why am I born in this country, not that country? Why do I have an accent? Why am I like this? Why am I not like that? That is because of this Anadi process. And so the person, the jiva that is today is a product of how many things have sculpted you as a body-mind complex to be this person? How many things? Since when did it start? Anadi.
Adi.
So now imagine how many things must have happened to finally, in this beginningless cycle of manifestation and working things out and pursuing and finding there's a void in my life, and then again finding some kind of savior, only to find that it's not a savior at all. How many things and causes took to finally realize there is nothing for me to do in this beginningless cycle, and I want to come out of it once and for all. I want to recognize that the truth of the jiva is consciousness. The truth of Prakriti is consciousness. There is only one reality. And on top of that, to have just enough grace, just the right kind of grace to say, I want to stay and listen and figure this out once and for all. I've played long enough and I've been a subject to these two powers long enough. No more. Therefore, we say moksha is a one-time process. There was never a time when you attained moksha before in this beginning cycle. Only one life, a jiva comes and says, enough. And they come to the guru who has already figured it out, and the guru shows them, and then you understand, aham Brahman asmi. I am that reality. Why? Because there is only one reality. It's not special to you. There's nothing special if you say aham Brahman asmi. Everything is Brahman. Having given us an introduction, let me continue with the verse. So going back, it says, being unborn, whose knowledge does not wane, I am the Lord of all beings. So he's speaking of himself as Ishvara. So this means Ishvara is unborn, always was, always will be, and his knowledge never wanes, because all that is here is Ishvara. So where is the knowledge going to disappear into if there's only one being here? Okay. And if his knowledge wanes, then could the universe survive? No, because if one thing goes wrong, the whole thing falls apart. If gravity disappears for 1 second, everything falls apart. If your digestion forgets how to digest food for 1 day, you wouldn't live. So his knowledge, which is permeating everything, which is in everything, which allows things to work and be what they are, it never wanes. So this means, for how long has Ishvara's intelligence, this projecting power and Avarana Shakti, for how long has it been operating trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions of insects and beings and galaxies and stars and causes and effects, and making sure that the doer always gets their original, karma pala? For how long has he been keeping track of this? Beginningless time. So in that way, his knowledge does not decline. And also, again, it does not mean that Ishvara is ignorant because of Avarana Shakti, because Ishvara is all that is. If you are the only being that is, how can you not know your nature? If you are all knowledge and all power. Yeah, so maybe I'll add just another term. So these two powers, this Vikshepa Shakti, it projects the universe of forms, and they're very intelligently put. Yeah. So this means that those forms have to know how to work together. Therefore, Vikshepa Shakti, you could say, is all knowledge and all power.
So if the concealment or veiling is constant, how can grace flow through? And I'm looking at it more as a function of time. And I know like everything is now, we understand conceptually, but if it's constant concealment, what opportunity does grace or anugraha have?
Yeah, it's not constant Amol, because you're not constantly ignorant how to walk. You're not constantly ignorant of what's the right way to live. So when you come and when you align yourself to the order, right, and you do certain things that are beneficial for you and for others, then slowly you unravel layers of wrongdoings from your being, right? So you start to align yourself more with what is to be done, the right way to communicate, the right way to apologize, the right way to ask a guru for help, the right way to learn, the right way to be patient and to sit down and to recognize the importance of self-reflection and giving yourself some time. All these things take some time. And the more you do that, the more you are opening yourself up for more clarity to take place in your life. So Avarana Shakti starts out for everyone in a form of ignorance, but everyone's given an opportunity by the help of parents and schools and society to slowly pull some weeds out. And as more weeds get pulled out, you're able to see more and more clearly. But because you can't quite see completely clearly, your mind wants to constantly explore and look for more things. And as it does that, it comes to people, like you, and they say, hey, I want to tell you about something. And then they tell you about some teacher over there, and you're initially skeptical. You say, well, I'm not so sure. But then you go, and then you hear something about the universe, and they say something about Brahman, and what is Brahman? And then you go into, Google, and then you research that. So slowly connections start to get built for you. But it's a very gradual process. So there's no linearity to it.
Yeah, it's like just an example. Like if I look at a flower, and I say the flower is like, say, white in color, it smells good, it's fragrant. My senses tell me everything. Now that's the Avaran Shakti. The flower in itself means something else. But as my mind projects and says, as a projection, I say this flower is beautiful. That's this jiva's projection. But someone else, some other jiva might say, no, I've seen better flowers.
Okay.
Someone might say, this flower is actually ugly. These are the projections, but the flower in itself has avarna on it. Now, my question is, there has to be a gap somewhere for me in the Avaran Shakti, for me to recognize that this flower actually, like if you do Satya Mithya, this flower actually eventually is break down into Brahman, Satchit.
Yes, I understand what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Very good point. I love it. So what Amol is saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is that since everything is colored by this Avarana Shakti, so you're saying now, well, if everything is colored by limitation, then how would I find the limitless inside any object? Because any object is limited. You see this? And the answer is, as Amol said, is that what is the substance? What is the truth of all objects, even if they are colored by Avarana Shakti or limitations? And the truth of all of them is always going to be existence and awareness. So no matter where you look, in whatever limited objects you try to seek, it doesn't matter what the object is. through an analysis, a cognitive analysis, you will always see two principles of any object, and that is the object is. Tell me this. Tell me about any experience you've ever had in your life. What's common about that experience? Besides, don't tell me the story of what happened, but what's common about every experience that you've ever had? Any memory?
That it is.
It is. That's why you're telling me this experience. So you cannot tell an experience unless it exists. Don't tell me about, oh, it existed in a bad state, a good state, a wonderful state, an ugly. It doesn't matter what state it is. The point is it exists. Whether it was a mind-blowing epiphany, it exists. So it depends upon existence. Now, what else is there in every single experience? Not only does it exist, there is also one other principle about it. How do you know it exists?
I'm conscious of it.
Yeah, you're conscious of it. Now, that consciousness does not belong to your body and mind. That consciousness is a feature of the final reality called Brahman. So now when you say, Aham Brahmanasmi, I am Brahman, you see what I mean by that? It doesn't mean that I have to now say, oh, I have to now look for that. Just your attempt to look for something. Is there a frustration experience? Does that exist? To try to look for Brahman? I'm trying to look for Brahman. It's not here. Does that exist? Yes. I'm trying to look for awareness. Does that entire experience of looking, does that exist? Yes, that's why there is an experience of frustration. And what else is in that experience of frustration? There's awareness of it. So every experience has two commonalities. It exists and there is awareness of that experience. So what is every single thing, every experience pervaded by? Existence, sat, and awareness, chit. Same thing with a rock. A rock is. And why is a rock is? Because there is awareness of the rock. So in that sense, the rock is appearing in me. The subject called Andre is appearing in me, and the rock is appearing in me. That is why I can say that Andre is and the rock is. They both depend on existence. There is awareness of Andre speaking right now. There is awareness of the rock. So that existence awareness does not belong to Andre or Vijay or anyone. It is the one conscious being shining through Andre's body and mind.
And through the rock?
And the rock, now the rock doesn't have awareness, but the rock exists. So both existence or awareness, they're one and the same reality. So then how do you understand that the rock is Brahman? Well, we said Brahman is understood in two words, Sat and Chit, existence and awareness. Now, with a human being, it's very easy. There is an existent I, and this I that is existent, in whose presence these words are being heard, is aware. But with a rock, you cannot say that the rock is aware. But what can you say about the rock? The rock exists, is. Therefore, the rock enjoys existence. This individual enjoys existence. Also, this individual enjoys awareness because they have a subtle body which reflects this reality, whereas the rock doesn't have the subtle body, which is why the rock doesn't express awareness, doesn't express that sort of sentiency. Okay, so two commonalities that you can never escape from. What are they?
Existence and consciousness.
Ishvara, being unborn, and is the Lord of all beings. Okay, so now we said that Ishvara is everything. Everything is him. So now we have to use the logic. And the logic in the Shastra is Gatasya karta gatanyaha, whereas Sarvasya karta is Sarvajnaha. So Gatasya karta, that means the maker of the pot. is the one who knows about the pot. So just let's look at a pot, for example. Okay. So the Gatasya Karta, the maker of this pot, what does this pot maker have to know about? For instance, they have to know about the the material to use for the pot. They have to know about the speed which to turn the clay, how wet the clay needs to be, how hard the clay needs to be, what density of the clay needs to be, the wheel, and how firm to hold the clay to shape it. And they also have to have very sensitive tactile feedback to know how hard to press, when to let go, when to stop spinning. So much knowledge required just to make one single pot, isn't it? And then how much to dry it, where to put it, in the shade or the sun, what temperature to make this pot. So in other words, the pot maker, whoever made this pot, the doer of the pot, has to have lots of knowledge in order to make this a functional unit, a functional thing that has some use in the world. Okay, therefore, Gatasya Karta, the maker of the pot, is a Gata Jnaha, is a knower of the pot. So whoever made something like a pot has to know about that which was made. Therefore, he's a Gata Jnaha. Okay, so what about, for example, a software engineer, the one who programs code for some database? So the creator of the code, so you could say the code karta, has to be a code jnaha, has to have a knowledge of the code. Okay, what about, so what does this show you? Wherever there is a doer, what's called in Sanskrit a kartritvam, wherever there is a doership always implies a jnatritvam, in other words, a knowership. Whenever there is a doer of something, of putting something together, that doer, the only way they can do it, the only way they can accomplish this creation is by knowing about this creation. This makes sense so far? Okay, so simple logic. So now let's apply the same logic to the entire universe. So if the pot maker has to have knowledge of the pot, then we say now sarvasya karta sarva jnaha. So now the maker of everything, sarvasya, has to have knowledge of everything. Why? Because not only does he have to have knowledge of the clay, how the clay is made, how the human being who made the pot is made, how the organs of the human being are made, how to create tactile feedback so you can press gently against the pot. We had for the longest time issues how to take a robot and press the egg without squishing it. This was so hard because you have to have sensors on the robot's hand to grab a thing called the egg and press it just right so it doesn't crack the egg and it's able to move it over to the other side. And then that's just for the egg. Now, so the robot has to look at the egg and says, okay, so now that it's a chicken egg, this is how hard I need to press. But now that this is a rock, this is how hard I need to press. So now we take this for granted, don't we? But this is so hard to do with robotics. So now if the creator has to have knowledge of us able to have proper tactile feedback of how to grasp things and let things go and not have your handshake too, even though some people like to squeeze your hand just to show them, I'm going to give you a good handshake. Okay, so all these things are there. Has to have knowledge of the air and oxygen interfacing with your lungs, and the lungs taking the right amount of oxygen and oxygenating the body and sending it through the veins and arteries, and the heart processing that, and the heart pumping just the amount of right pressure to negate the effects of gravity, because gravity is pulling you down. So now the heart has to pull it back up. So the owner, the creator of you know, of the sky, of the weather patterns, of the plants, of the galaxies, of the formation of the stars. Can you imagine all this? How much you have to know to put this all together? How do you keep the Earth in an orbit around the sun without making the Earth 1 millimeter any closer to the sun? And you do this, you maintain the celestial body around the sun for millennia without the Earth ever getting further or you know, further apart or closer to the sun. How is this possible? So the amount of intelligence to maintain this universe is astronomical. It's mind-blowing. And for all the things to work together in an harmony that we can depend upon, and in which we can sit down enough and to even ask the question, who am I? Even that is just mind-blowing, because animals can't do that. But then you give an extra intelligence to the human being who can actually say, I am self-aware. And then what does it even mean to be self-aware? And even the question, what, W-H-A-T, right? Even that, like, what is the concept of a question versus a statement? Like, we just totally take this for granted. And yet all these things are given to you and you just offered and you just process them. You mix a bunch of 26 letters of the English alphabet. You rearrange these letters. You create words and rearrange words to create sentences, rearrange sentences to create paragraphs, and then throw them over to the other person's ears. The other person processes this and they respond back to you. So all your life, you're just rearranging 26 letters of the alphabet and making all sorts of jokes, communications. And not only that, but the alphabet itself is just a series of sounds. In other words, you discover your nature, who you are, through mere sound waves traveling through the air into your ear. All we're doing here is just throwing sounds at each other. And when we attach meanings onto those sounds, and then you say, if I hear this sound, then this is what that means. So the creator to create and put this together and make it all work in harmony to the point where you study the laws and there is so much about just the retina of the eye that you have to not only go to a doctor, but then specialize an extra 10 years to be an optometrist to recognize how to you know, deal with the retina of the eye. 5 to 10 years worth of knowledge just in the eye alone. So 5 years goes of your time just to recognize the knowledge within the eye. And then how many more years just to see the, you know, how the atoms are put together. All of that is Sarvasya Karta, the maker of everything, has to have knowledge of everything. And thereby, and everything that is made benefits each other. Okay, the air your exhalation benefits the plants, and their exhalation, you know, benefits you. So there is a mutual benefit. And then the bees, of course, they benefit the flowers in a form of pollination, and the bees supply the nectar, eventually the honey, to the bees. And then the bees will supply you that delicious, you know, that honey. By the way, did you know that honey is one of the only foods that you can leave for almost indefinitely without it rotting away? Let's go further into Ishvara. What is the material and intelligent cause of the universe? Okay. So Ishvara is what we call Pravaha Nityatvam. So Pravaha Nityatvam, this word Nityatvam means forever. So that means it's the Tvam is the condition of permanence. So what is the condition of permanence? It's always fluctuating, but always remains the same as knowledge and power. So Ishvara is always undergoing changes from manifest to unmanifest, but it always maintains its status of all knowledge and all power. So Ishvara is all knowledge, all power, equals all knowledge and power, Sarva Jnaha, Sarva Shakti. And this all knowledge, all power is constantly fluctuating undergoing changes to account for the constant cause and effect relationships that are happening in the universe. So we'll say fluctuating. You see, remember how we started out the discussion? We used the example of the dream. Now, in the dream, what is the material inside your dream? Do you like bring materials from the outside? And
The
just-
mind.
Exactly. So now, but okay, but let's go further. Yes, the mind, but what is that rock made of in your dream? It's so solid, isn't it? It's like a wall and you can't go through it. What is that? Because it's got a texture, it's got a definition to it, it's got difference to it. The stuff in your dream is made of your mind, but what is your mind made of?
Consciousness.
Let's not go there. Let's go one before. What is your mind? What is your mind store?
Impressions and memories.
Information about your life. So this means your mind can only project what it knows. Is that right? Good. Now, if we said that Ishvara is all knowledge, all power, that means it knows everything, how things are to work, why things are working, how things will not work, when things will not work, what will happen to your physiology when you lie, which is to get really hot and bothered and guilty and warm. That happens automatically. Okay, so what is then the stuff in your dream made of? Information, and we call that knowledge, intelligence, because that's all your mind really is. Just information reorganizing itself in a form of a mountain, in a form of a person that you saw, in a form of food, in a form of laws, in a form of teacher, in a form of Vedanta, in a form of everything. It's just information, really, constantly reorganizing. Now, does information ever become anything other than information? No. That's why we call Pravaha Nityatvam. So this knowledge is constantly reorganizing itself in infinite amount of forms, manifesting as this universe, but the knowledge itself, Ishvara itself as knowledge and power, remains knowledge and power. To give you a nice metaphor of this, just imagine like this: zeros and ones are just constantly rearranging zeros and ones in all forms of combinations and permutations. And at the level of your eyes, what do you see? You see a tree, you see a rock, you see a mountain, you see a person, you see a face, you hear words, you taste sounds. But through the analysis, as we've done through Satya Mithya, what is it all ultimately resolving into? How you break down a simple you look at a pot. Now, this pot doesn't just mean a pot. It can also mean your thought. Because your thought, can you see this pot? Yes. Can you see your thought? I mean, do you know about your thoughts? So do you know about the pot? Yes. Do you know about your thought? Yes. So there's no difference between a pot and a thought. It's the same thing. Okay. So now, if this was your thought, let's analyze your thought, because your whole life is just a series of thoughts. Even the concept of yourself is just thoughts. So let's look at your thought now. This thought, this pot, in this case, can be broken down into the substance that inheres it, which is the clay. Is that a lie that I just said? Is that a lie?
No.
Is that a falsehood? No. It is simply looking through an analysis of what this really is. So now, what is more here? Is more here the clay, or is more here the pot? Which is more true?
Clay.
The clay. Why is clay more true than the pot?
Because clay will survive, pot will be destroyed.
Exactly. So if I drop this, then whatever breaks, that is less true, and whatever survives, that is more true. So the substance always survives, and the substance manifesting as a form, that form onto which you attribute a name breaks. In this case, that form, the name is a pot. So now you look at clay and you say, well, I'm happy with that. Let's go home. No, we go further. We say that clay is made of smaller particles, such as silica. And then you don't have to now go into science deeply. You can just look at if it's applying to a pot and a clay, then it's going to apply to clay and whatever else the clay is made of. Does that make sense so far? Yes. So now if it reduces into so on and on and on atoms, then atoms reduce into finer and finer particles, and in particles, you know, ultimately, you know, quantum physics, they just say that through their analysis, it's just mathematical formulas. The subtler you go, notice this, the more down you go, what happens? Sameness.
Turn into concepts or
The more-
intelligence.
The more sameness.
The same fundamental particle will come.
But look at this.
Or-
Look at this analysis. Okay. So at the level of the pots, right, here's one pot. Here's by the way, I made this. This is also clay, but this is a bridge. Okay. So it has a very different name to it because it has a different function, and it's got a little you know, bridge there. And so we give it a totally different name. So now, whether you resolve, when you resolve both of them, you still come to the exact same substance. But now, at the level of the forms, you have a very different name, don't you? So now, suppose some person likes pots and I like bridges. You and I have a lot of space for debates, don't we? Like, no, bridges are better. No, pots are prettier. They have water function. No, bridges, you know, kids like to play with these things. Kids are going to break these things. So we're going to have endless debates between these two. But as we go down and down and down, notice what happens at the level of the atoms. Can you have such a debate at the level of the atoms? Because both of these are just atoms. So all of your debates are in reference to
Name and form.
just forms given onto names. So all of the discussions in the world that we ever have and quarrelsome are only in reference to looking at the reality, the one reality from one single standpoint, and totally neglecting that very thing, the sounds and the forms, they're reducible, and the more you reduce it, the closer you come to oneness. Even at the atoms are all the same. In fact, they're not really the same. They have different, you know, atomic weight. But at the level of the proton and the neutron, you have exact sameness over there. So the more you go down, the more oneness it becomes. The more you go up in the scale, the more forms with different names and more chance for discussion. And at every single level of manifestation, what do? We have a subject matter in school to study. So now you have an entire school about pot making, don't you? And then you have an entire school about bridge making, don't you? And then you have an entire school about clay, what clay is made of. And then you have an entire school about atoms. So at every level of reality, you build schools and then you get stuck in that school and you just talk about it. Okay, which is okay. That's how the world progresses, by the way. But what Vedanta is showing you is that every form ultimately reduces and depends on something smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's the subject matter of quantum physics, by the way. They want to know, what is all this big world of forms? What is it all reducible into? And their stopping is at mere mathematical formulas. In other words, they call it concepts. That means it's so subtle, so small, so subtle that you can't even give it a form anymore. There's no dimensions, there's no weight to it anymore. It's just formulas. Now Vedanta steps in and says there is something after concepts, and those concepts are ultimately just intelligence, reshuffling themselves in the, like zeros and ones, in the form of concepts, in the form of particles, in the form of atoms. And atoms, which are nothing but that same intelligence, reshuffling to form molecules, molecules coming together to form cells, cells coming together to form limbs like a heart, heart then comes together with the limb of lungs and kidneys, and the kidneys and lungs and heart come together intelligently by Sarvanya Sarva Shakti, the one who knows everything, the one who created everything, puts it together and makes the individual called a human being who is then able to ask the question, what is this individual made of? And the individual says, well, it's made of smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, but the only thing the experience of the individual is at the level of the big, because that's where your vision is. So now, do you have to destroy to get to the reality of this object, whatever you want to call it? Do you have to destroy anything to get to the reality of what this really is? Suppose the reality of this is atoms. To get to the atoms, do I have to destroy the pot?
No.
To get to the atoms,
No.
do I have to destroy
It's there.
the clay? Exactly. To get to the atoms, do I have to destroy the silica? To get to the
Mhm.
atoms, do I have to destroy the atoms?
They're there.
Exactly. It's all there simultaneously. All I have to do is just look at it for what it is, and though my eyes can only see one substance at the level of what my eyes see, which is the pot, what does my cognition understand simultaneously without having to do anything about this reality? It just looks right through. It's a cognitive shift. I need not do anything about reality. Reality is as it is. All conflicts happen at the level when I don't see for what this really is. And so my vision is only stuck at the pot. And so all my discussions about political parties, about, this side, that side, president, about, who said what. And yet you don't realize that the whole thing is just made of so many different interactions coming together to form the experience that you get so entangled into.
Andre,
Yes.
the pot is the vivarth of clay, the Jagat is vivarth of Brahm, and therefore Brahm being the substance with which Jagat is made, the consciousness being substance with which Jagat is made. If we take that assumption away that it is not the material cause, in that case, then there are two. Then we are in duality.
Yeah. So duality is thus not a real thing. It's only real when you stop at the form. When you reduce the form cognitively, you don't have to do anything physically to the form, you arrive to oneness, you arrive to Advaita, which is why, okay, now, without making a claim, does this dualistic form, these two things, does it contradict oneness? Or should I say, does oneness contradict these two forms?
No.
Okay, let me put it like this. Do these two forms, which are both clay, do they contradict the clay?
No.
Okay, why not?
Because, it depends upon the seer. The one who's seeing them as two. When the seer is seeing them as name and form, then they contradict. But if the seer is able to see that the reality of these two is both the clay, the material, then it's no contradiction.
Exactly. So this means the contradiction is only at the level of ignorance. If I'm not told what the nature of reality is, you have no choice but to see duality. And when you see duality, you have no choice but to have quarrels at the level of duality. When you are shown the nature of reality, then you can still have practical conversations about the bridge and the pot. But at the same time, ultimately, you are both talking about the one same substance, inhering through and through whatever form you ever discuss. Let's go back to Ishvara. What is the nature of Ishvara? We said it's pravaha nityatvam. Okay. So it is eternally changing, but at the same time, it never inheres the attributes of what it changes into. It never takes on the attributes. So if this pot, if the clay changes, seemingly changes into this form, and the clay seemingly changes into this form, has the clay actually taken on the attributes of any one of these forms? No.
No.
Because if the clay has taken on the attributes of this, then it would never be able to manifest as this. And if it takes on the attributes of this, it will never be able to manifest as something even smaller. So let me show you an example directly. When there is anger in the mind, see, anger, you could put it like this. Anger is a series of neurons coming together. Suppose 25 neurons, just for simplicity. 25 neurons coming together, and when they come together, what happens? Anger comes. Emotion of anger comes. But now, if you look into an individual cell, can you find anger in any one of those individual cells? Like if you like dissect, are you going to find anger inside an individual cell? No. So in other words, you have 25, for example, neurons coming together in a combination, and anger comes. And yet you inspect the individual cells, the components that make up that experience of anger, and you can't find anger inside. So if that is true for a cell, then what to say of Ishvara? What to say of intelligence? If even the neuron doesn't inhere anger, then what to say of the components that make up a neuron? So this means that whatever Ishvara manifests as, it never becomes that. Otherwise, Ishvara will become the most loaded being. If someone's angry, Ishvara is now, angry also. If someone's happy, Ishvara is also, happy. It doesn't work like that. So Ishvara always remains Pravaha Nityatvam, eternally knowledge and power, reshuffling, but even if it reshuffles into a neuron, into a pot, into a clay, into the air, into out-breath, into joy, into anger, into whatever it is, it always remains knowledge and power. Ishvara never takes on the attributes of what it manifests as, just like the clay never takes on the attributes of the pot.
Yes.
That's why Ishvara is Pravaha Nityatvam. It eternally is changing and molding, but even if it's changing and molding, it never becomes anything other than what it is, which is knowledge and power. Okay, now what else is Ishvara? Ishvara is thus, because we said is the cause of the universe. So Ishvara means cause of the universe. Okay, so Ishvara is also, we say, intelligent cause of the universe. Nimitta Karanam. Okay, what is the intelligent cause of the pot?
Potter.
The potter, exactly. What's the intelligent cause of everything? Ishvara. Okay, so in other words, what this means is that everything that is ever created, everything that is ever known, ever talked about, ever inferred, ever used for our purposes, it is, what is the creator of that? It is one creator, which is whose nature is nimitta karanam, and which means intelligent cause. Now, sometimes we also say efficient cause, efficient. Why do we say efficient? Because everything is so efficiently made that it's amazing how efficient things are. That means nothing's out of place. Efficient means nothing sort of, it doesn't have space for errors. It's perfectly made already. So in that sense, it's efficient. And Ishvara is also the material cause. So nimitta karanam and upadana. So karana is the cause, upadana is the material. So where does the potter get its materials from?
Clay, the land.
And where does the clay, right? So the potter is always going to be away from?
Different from clay.
The material, right? You got that? Okay. So now, can you say the same thing about the creator of the universe? I see the Arkiri's children are shaking their heads and saying no. So they're already ahead of us. So does Ishvara, the creator of the universe, have to, for example, call up somebody and says, hey, look, I want to create time and space and elements, and look, I don't have any materials here, so can you just like throw me some stuff over here so I can cobble up a universe for these guys so I can work out who they are? Does Ishvara do that? I see, now we have to get very silly. We have to go into imagination mode. So while the potter uses materials from the outside, when it comes to Ishvara, where does Ishvara get his materials from?
He becomes.
From himself. Therefore, he does not borrow the materials. He takes the material from himself. There are no pre-existing materials somewhere that he just sort of borrows from somewhere else, because now you kind of get into this logical problem. So now there's Ishvara 1 who has to contact Ishvara 2. And what Shankara says, logically, this is impossible. Why? Because if Ishvara was the intelligent cause and the Upadana Karanam was a different kind of a cause, since they're two different things, can there be a possibility for them coordinating or interfacing together if they're two totally different things? And also, here's the problem with thinking that Ishvara is borrowing his materials, because we have this issue in Sankhya. We think that materials are different from consciousness. So it's a valid argument. If Ishvara is the intelligent cause, and he has to call another Ishvara up for the materials, he has to reach over and get Prakriti, like it's a different kind of thing, then isn't material always an intelligent assembly of things? Isn't material always made out of an intelligent sculptor? Like even to create wood, right? Wood is made of very fine material. You need intelligence for that. So there's a contradiction. You can't get material. You need an intelligent cause to create the material. So therefore, Ishvara, the creator, is both the intelligent cause and the material cause. When the spider creates the web out of itself, the spider used his own intelligence to create the web. Yes? Okay. And the web comes out of the spider. Yes? Okay. So now, when there is this intelligent web that's being created, can you now say that the spider is as good as the web, or the spider is so much more than the web?
The spider is so much more than the
So
web.
much more than the web, because the spider is independent of the web that he creates. He can swallow the web inside himself. He can spit out a new web. He can chill out. He's the governor of this web. He knows exactly how the web works, how strong the web is going to be. He is the intelligent cause and the material cause of his own creation. However, what's the only limitation of this example, if you think about it?
Spatially different.
Yeah, they're different. Good. So now you have the spider and you have the web. They're two different things, right? So now in Mundaka Upanishad, we will negate this. And how do they negate this limitation? They say the earth, for example. What arises out of the earth? Plants. So now are the plants any different from the earth from which they arose? Because they're made from the same elements, from the same nutrients? No. So they're one and the same. So that means one earth is able to create different forms out of itself with different nutrition, with different functions, with different forms. And so that earth is both the efficient cause, the intelligent cause for those plants in one way, you can look at it like that, and it's also the material cause for those plants. Okay, so what I want to show is that every example in Vedanta will have limitations. So instead of now saying, no, it doesn't apply, it's wrong, that's not the point. It's just there to open up a possibility to show you, to show this final reality. Okay, so what is Ishvara? Summary. Ishvara is the intelligent cause from which the blueprint for how things are to work. It is the material cause. That means all elements, air, fire, space, water, earth, all of that arises from Ishvara. It is pravaha nityatvam. That means its essential nature is always intelligence, which is constantly reshuffling to account for the changes in the universe. But it always remains intelligence, and it is the governor, the sustainer, and the destroyer of everything. And you and I, who are now having this conversation, are one of the manifestations of Ishvara's material and efficient cause. So now, hopefully, you look at yourself differently. You're not just some random being who's a nobody. You are a manifestation of this one cause of the universe, from which, which is governing this universe for trillions of years and will continue to do so. And it gives you the key to recognize that your truth and Ishvara's truth is one. And that key is always available, and you just have to ask. And when you start asking, he cannot fail, because the promise of moksha, you call it a promise, is the promise of all knowledge and all power. When all knowledge and all power, the one who is omniscient and omnipotent, when he makes a promise, can that promise ever fail? No, because he doesn't get things wrong. He accounts everything simultaneously, and that promise is always available to you. Therefore, moksha cannot be a failure, because it is not some random person's claim, it is the claim of Lord Krishna. Whereas the jiva, so we talked about Ishvara. Now, what about the jiva? Well, as I said, the jiva is not all knowledge and all power, does not know who they are, what they want, what they don't want. They have to figure that out. And the reason why the jiva has a constant problem with contradictions in this world is why? Because their level is at the level of, their sight is a level of forms. Whereas from the standpoint of Ishvara, is there a contradiction between anything? No, not at all. It's really funny. One of the most common disputes that I undergo is when someone from a different school challenges me and says, no, Vedanta is saying this, but Buddhism is saying that. Knowledge is saying this, but experience is different. Experience is superior to knowledge. But here's how it is from my standpoint. I never see a contradiction with anything, because I understand. I see the oneness. But when a person doesn't see the oneness, they have no choice but to find faults. Even if you tell them that experience and knowledge are the same thing from two different standpoints, and you say, no, I agree. I'm totally on your side. Even then, they will not agree with you, because they still are operating at the level of contradiction. The sight, when your sight it is the level of the pot, no matter what you say, I tell you, you're not going to persuade that person, because their sight is stuck at the level of the pot. But you see the pot, you see the clay, you see the atoms, and so where are your words coming from? All levels simultaneously. Where is your opponent's words coming from? Only from the level of the pot. And so when we say Ishvara's grace, it just means that you need that humility. You need that non-sense of pride, that the non-pride where I know it, and this is how it is, and I know better. Just simply letting go of everything you have learned, trusting the process, understanding that there's nothing to worry about. The Guru takes you to the final reality, and when you are there, which you are there already right now, you see that there is no contradiction between anything in this universe. Between Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Vedanta, there's no contradiction whatsoever, zero. The contradiction is only at the level of ignorance. And that, I tell you, is the greatest freedom. You just relax. You're just relaxing. Whoever wants to listen, you're welcome. If you want to walk away thinking that I have no clue what I'm talking about, that's your thing, because I am operating at different levels and you're still at level 1. And I was at level 1 too, and I understood when I was there, I could not listen to anyone who was at all levels, because they sounded like a contradiction, but they were not a contradiction. So that is the beauty of Advaita Vedanta. It just makes you chill out. And when you chill out, all around you, the world is still going blah, 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 yapping left and right. And you're like, this is just for children. It's like for children. But you took a long time to come to that process. And that's the greatest freedom there is. And so this will continue next week by stating again, why does the jiva suffer? Again, I will restate because of these contradictions. And then Krishna will state a contradictory statement. And here it is. He will say, wielding my own prakriti, I come into being by my own creative power. Now you're going to say, wait, you just said, Krishna, you're unborn. And now you're saying, I come into being. So what will we do next week? We have to analyze what is the word I referring to. So next week, we will go into the three orders of reality, Paramartika, Vyavaharika, and Pratibhasika. And we will go into what is Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam. And we will give some interesting examples to help you understand this final reality as yourself. Purnamadav, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.